George Henderson is here somewhere in Zoom land.
Hi, George. Can you hear us? Can you see us well?
Fine. I can hear you fine. I'm having a little trouble with my my Zoom program, but I'm here and I'm listening, and I can see you when you flip up the full screen.
Perfect. Thanks for being here.
Good morning. Today is December 8th, 2022. This is the full agency meeting of the Agency on Bay Management. Not the chairman, Barbara Sheen Todd. I'm the vice chair, Woody Brown there, the city of Largo, filling in for Barbara, who's at home resting and doing quite well right now, but she's not going to be with us today. For those members attending virtually, we kindly request to keep your webcam turned on throughout the meeting to enhance participation. And Sarah is going to review, and just in case you haven't been on Zoom for a little while, Sarah is going to review a little bit of procedural stuff.
Good morning. So yes, nice reminder, if you're here with us on Zoom, please keep your cameras on. We really encourage you to do that so it can be a little bit more interactive for us here in the space and online. Also, we're going to do roll call in a few, so please unmute yourself during that so we can make sure we take attendance and have you counted. But then afterwards, keep yourself on mute so that we avoid any unnecessary disruptions to our meeting. If you have any issues, you can't hear us or see us well, please use the chat and let us know. I'll be monitoring that throughout the meeting. And then for those of you in the room, you see these microphones in front of you. They work really well if you get up nice and close to them. So don't be afraid to yank the mic, bring it close to you. That's so that our folks at home can make sure that they hear you. With that, I'll turn it back over to you. Thanks.
Thank you. At this point, I'll ask Ben if you can take attendance.
Good morning, everyone. I'm filling in for Alana, who is at the South Florida Climate Contact Conference. And Sarah's motioning me to talk and she's on my. Here we go. Audubon, Florida.
Mark Rochelle here with Audubon, Florida.
Friends of the Hillsborough River. Sierra Club. Tampa Bay Conservancy, Tampa Bay Waterkeeper, Tampa Bay Watch, Joe Island Clams, Environmental Consulting Wood, Gulf Stream Natural Gas.
I don't know. Excuse me, Brenda, I don't think they can hear you.
Oh.
Bring that real close to you.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
They're saying
They're saying there's not using.
Some are saying yes, some are saying no. Let's try, if you wouldn't mind handing her that one, let's try with that one.
Can you guys hear me now?
Got some nods. Okay, cool. Maybe you want to start from the beginning.
I think I need to because there were too many absences.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm gonna start again. Audubon, Florida.
So this is Mark Rochelle with Audubon, Florida. Can you hear me?
That's obviously not working very well.
Audubon, Florida.
Can you hear me? This is Mark Rochelle with Audubon, Florida.
Thank you for answering again. Friends of Hillsborough River. Sierra Club.
Yeah, Nancy Stevens.
Thank you. Tampa Bay Conservancy.
Sally Thompson.
Thank you. Tampa Bay Waterkeeper. Tampa Bay Watch. Joe Island Clams. Wood Consulting. Gulf Stream Natural Gas. Tampa Bay Pilots Association. Mosaic Company.
Pilots are here.
Tampa Electric Company.
And Nick Fletcher's here.
IFAS, Florida Sea Grant. USF College of Marine Science.
Mark Luther here for USF.
University of Tampa, Eckerd College, Egmont Key Alliance, Commissioner Stacy White, Staff David Glitzberg, Hillsborough County. Thank you. Manatee staff. Commissioner Ron Oakley from Pasco County, Pasco staff. Commissioner Charlie Justice. Manila staff, Melanie Reed.
Yep, I'm here.
Thank you. Port Tampa Bay.
Morning, Chris Cooley here with Port Tampa Bay.
Thank you. Port of St. Petersburg. Manatee Port Authority.
Good morning, Dan Fitzpatrick, Seaport Manatee.
Thank you. St. Petersburg. Tampa.
Heather Maggio with the City of Tampa.
Thank you. Councilman James Chambers, Temple Terrace.
Here.
Clearwater. Ms. Todd. Vice Chair Mayor Brown.
Here.
U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
This is Aubrey Hirschhorn with the Corps of Engineers.
Thank you. U.S. Geological Survey. NOAA National Marine Fisheries Service.
Yes, good morning. Mark Schrammick. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
Florida Department of Environmental Protection.
Melissa Madden.
Thank you. Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. Morning, thank you. Florida Fish and Wildlife Research Institute.
Brad Furman for FWRI. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning. Florida Department of Transportation. Southwest Florida Water Management District.
Good morning, Tara Shiro and Mark Walton, sitting in for Chris Anastasio.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Ann Paul here. Mr. George Henderson.
I'm here.
Thank you. Environmental Protection Commission of Hillsborough County. Hillsborough County City County Planning Commission.
Just here.
Thank you. Estuary Commission.
Mark Stagg and Jessica Lewis.
Thank you. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Thank you. MacDill Air Force Base.
Hey, good morning. This is Andy Likens with MacDill.
Good morning. Tampa Bay Water.
Morning, everybody. Bob McConnell with Tampa Bay Water.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this point, I will ask if there's any public comment, either here in person.
This isn't public comment, but there's a new commission. There's a new commission in Hillsborough County. Stacy White's no longer a county commissioner, so you may want to get in touch with him and find out who's going to take his place.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. This is Commissioner Patkin. Is there any public comment here in person? And Sarah, is there anybody online?
No.
Thank you. Seeing none, we'll move on to announcements. So I have one announcement. The Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council will be hosting the annual Resiliency Leadership Summit on May 4th and 5th, 2023 at the Trade Winds Resort in St. Pete Beach. The Future of the Region Awards Luncheon will take place on May 5th. Summit registration will begin January 3rd, and early bird registration will end on the 31st of January. We're looking for Summit sponsors. You can find more information on the Summit webpage, which is on tbrpc.org/Summit 2023. Does anybody else have any announcements? Very good. The next item is approval of the September 8th, 2022 full agency meeting minutes. I have a motion and a second. Any changes or corrections? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. Next, we'll have the ABM committee meeting minutes. Chair Todd appointed Sean College from the Hillsborough Planning Commission as the new chair of the Natural Resources Environmental Impact Review Committee. I'd like also to note that the Legislative Review Committee still needs a chair, so if you're interested in that position, please let Ren know or myself know. The first item of the first presentation will be a swim restoration project dashboard and geodatabase with Mark Walton and Tara Shiro from the Southwest Florida Water Management District.
Thank you very much. Just gonna share our screen. Give me one moment. And okay, can everybody hear us and see our screen? Yep,
Yes,
I've got a sort of thumbs up on the screen. Thank you very much. All right, Tara, do you want to take it away?
Thanks, Mark. Good morning, all. My name is Tara Shiro, and today I'm here with Senior Environmental Scientist Mark Walton. We are here from the Southwest Florida Water Management District with the Surface Water Improvement and Management, or SWIM section. Today, we're going to be presenting on tracking our swim restoration projects. It's a concentrated effort to lay the groundwork for two of our foundational efforts to lift swim to be an efficient and productive model. Next. So our SWIM program began in 1987, but we've always had the need to house our historical project information. Previous efforts to retrieve project information included pulling record boxes or dusting off old files. So the Restoration Geodatabase is actually an information tool that has consolidated and standardized our project information and metrics. It includes our project mapping, funding, and restored habitat polygons. And we're able to have this information all in a central location so we can pull information requests or reports for our governing board, management, or cooperators all in an easy and consistent format. The database is able to be queried to find specific projects and answer questions, and it has been integrated into a dashboard that Mark is going to demo for us later. Our site assessments are used to evaluate the success of project designs, the methods and planting plans, and if the goals of the historic project have been met. The database houses the history of how, why, and what was done, while the assessments inform the current condition of the site and whether the project has been successful in meeting its goals and expectations. These data sets work together to assist with future project planning. Next. So continuing with our site assessments, we started in late 2020 and we visited 81 sites around Tampa Bay. And this following year, we're going to actually assess 42 more. So we plan to visit these sites every 4 years for the assessments. And through the assessments, we use visual indicators to evaluate both ecological and hydrological functioning of the site. It's adapted from the Uniform Mitigation Assessment Method, or UMAM, the accepted wetland assessment method from DEP. And our survey methodology provides scoring of the site, of the condition, and if it's meeting its goals and expectations. We use a survey 1, 2, 3 for our field template, and it's used for Esri mobile mapping platform, so it's really easy to use in the field. Next. A little bit more about our survey 1, 2, 3. There's a lot of efficiencies we've seen with this. It saves us time, and we're able to do it through radio buttons and drop downs to control our answers, all while in the field on our iPad. It gives an opportunity for comment, and we can embed links and other information sources within the survey, so we can pull up plans or other historical information on the site, all while on the iPad in the field. And it helps us reach our desired volume of site assessments. Next. So this is an image of Clam Bayou. It's one of our larger sites in Pinellas County. It shows some of the conditions that we score in our assessments. We actually use 3 different categories to assess, including the water environment, vegetation community, and the landscape and location support. The water environment looks at indicators such as desirable water quality, water level, flow, and connectivity, while the vegetation community looks at the assemblage of native and invasive species, vegetation health, and native plant succession. Location and landscape is looking at the pressures from surrounding land use and edge effects and connection to other larger natural areas. For a site that may be larger like this one, we might have several parts of the site that we assess, and it's weighted into an overall score. Each of these 3 categories, we use the relevant indicators and determine a score out of 10. Next. So this is just a preview of how the electronic template from Survey 123 is uploaded into our real-time ArcGIS online. And this functionality provides viewable web maps, dashboards, and it's easy for comparing results, and it ties into our larger restoration geodatabase. Next.
Whoops.
Yeah, sorry. Uh-oh. Oh dear. All right. Oh,
No.
dear. Let me just try and reshare.
We're on slide
Apologies.
7.
All right, there we go.
Perfect. All right, so just some general observations about our scoring sites and factors that have contributed to higher or lower scores on our sites are kind of as follows. Some site management is always a really good predictor, regardless of the age of the site, as how the site's going to score. A lot of our higher scoring sites had regular maintenance, and the native vegetation was thriving and recruiting at various stand sizes. There was minimal exotic vegetation, and these were such large preserves like Cortez or Robinson Preserve. Additionally, the upland sites need more maintenance compared to estuarine or wetland environments. Some of the small private sites often have poor access, they're less visible, and maintenance may not be as frequent. Sites that were next to larger natural areas or open water, they had reduced edge effects and less pressures from invasive species, while projects in urban areas tended to have more improper use, such as homelessness, trash. Some of our sites that were isolated estuarine environments, such as our first project, Hendry Delta, have tidal connections which assist with keeping invasives at bay. And some of our narrow shoreline projects did not score highly due to impacts from the upland edge effect impacting the establishment of native communities and also coastline pressures such as erosion from wave energy. With climate change, we may expect these pressures to intensify. Next. Mark's now going to discuss our restoration database. Thanks, Mark.
Okay, hopefully the technology keeps working for us. So thanks for the overview of the site assessment. So that's one side. That is one side of the coin of how we're tracking our restoration sites. We bring that into our geodatabase along with a lot of additional information that we pull out of our engineering survey data, contract data, and our project management and financial systems within the site. So it helps us get a good picture of what we've been doing, both as a program as a whole, but also for individual projects. So the best way to show that, oops, sorry, I'm going to try and get out of here. And go over to here. All right. So best way to show it's a demonstration on our web app. So this is the front end of our geodatabase. So we pull all that information together. We bring in points of our project location, so we can look at that high view, how we've done across our district area. We bring in our site assessment data and also the construction boundaries for the project and the individual planting zones and habitats we've been working in. So it gives us that really good picture of all the different elements of our project. We also have some tables we can bring in, contract information from our project management system, even planting and so forth. Okay, so at this broad scale, large scale, we tend to look at our overall district metrics. And we use this a lot for our regular reporting, where have we done projects, both over the full history of our program and for a given year. And also, what are our metrics across different counties and different watersheds? So we've set up our dashboard here so we can filter projects by different groupings. So for instance, if we want to see what we've done in Tampa Bay, it's easy enough for us to pull that up and really zoom in and focus in on those projects. Perhaps we want to see, how many acres were restored across the different counties in Tampa Bay. So we have some charts set up where we can pull that information really quickly. So this helps us with our outreach efforts, helps us when we're working with our other cooperators and other stakeholders, and also our board, or even if we get information requests from the public. All right, so that's sort of one use of our project database. We also have various mapping tools that we can use here to really dig in. But the other way we use this is to go and assess particular projects and really get that picture of how a project has evolved, both from inception to construction to follow up. So let's take you through the story of a particular project. So I'm going to use our search function here and look for Newman Branch. It's out on Tico property in the south side of Tampa Bay. So we're going to zoom in on there. And when we zoom in, we can start to see some of these other elements we have. We have our construction boundaries in the red outline, and then the different habitats we've been working in, shown in those colors. So the beauty of the setup here is that all these different data sets are linked together for a project. So it makes it easy for us to manage different types of data, but also to have access to all of this when we need it. So zooming in, we can see all those different data sets there. If we want, we can dig into the details of that particular site and see what this was all about. So this was a freshwater and upland restoration. It was completed in 2016. We have our acres and our cooperate information, funding information, and some small details about what was there before. So we had a extensive exotic species channelization of the historic creek. We can dig in a bit further. Perhaps we want to add some additional data from either the district's database or from external sources. So maybe we put in some old imagery, and yeah, we can see this site was definitely a mess. Lots of disturbance, very straight channel there. So yeah, definitely primed for restoration. So let's turn that off for a moment. We'll bring it over to today, and we'll have a look at maybe some imagery that we have for that. All right, so we can go in further, look at perhaps some of the different habitats that we worked in. So we'll go in here and look at different habitats that were that we restored, and we can see we restored some high marsh, low marsh, open water, and we can maybe dig further into that using our related data set. So if we select one of those, we can go into look right down to what we planted at that site. We planted some marsh grasses, some rushes, and so forth. So really, we got that full picture of that design at our fingertips. And then when we go back to look at these sites for our restoration, site assessments, we've got that good picture of what was intended to be done in these sites. Bearing in mind some of these were completed 30, 35 years ago. So we can then pull out the information from our site assessment, see that this site scored fairly well. Water environment was good, vegetation's establishing well, a good overall score. We have some notes from our evaluators about transitions of the vegetation community. So that gives us some good ideas of where we need to follow up on. So yeah, really helps us to bring that picture of that site to light. We even have photos that we can bring up from the site, those little black dots, so we can go in, click on the link there and bring up different photos from that particular site, so we can see the establishment of the vegetation. All right, so wrapping up, we'll go back to our takeaways. So this is a tool at the moment that we use internally to help us manage our data, help us convey the information of what we've done in our program, but also help us to evaluate our designs and the management of our sites. Going forward, I think we can use this for a lot more. We can go and see what type of projects are working and what aren't, where opportunities might be for future opportunities, future restoration, in terms of things like corridor planning. We can use this to help with regional habitat mapping efforts. It's important to know that this doesn't really replace the need to go out and look at our sites in person, but it really does give us a tool where we now have essentially our project folder, our field notebook, our camera roll, all in one place, and we can bring up that information to augment our on the ground understanding. And the real reason why we do this is to be able to learn from what we've done in the past. We don't want to do these restoration projects and then forget about them. Each of them has a story to tell about what was successful, what wasn't, what has changed, whether we intended it to change one way or not, and we can learn from that. So even projects like Hendry Delta, which was SWIM's first restoration project, still has a story to tell. And this tool's help us tell that story. So with that, if you have time for questions, we're happy to answer them. Otherwise, we're happy to provide our email if you want to get in touch with us.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Tara. Just as a reminder, this presentation was scheduled at the last meeting, and it was going forward to today. It certainly seems like a great tool. My question is there a public facing part of this? Is this accessible to the public?
Not presently. It's still somewhat early days in this, but eventually it may be turned into a public facing tool. Otherwise, it's a tool that we can work with people who have interest in that data to pull out the sort of information that they might be interested in. But in the future, once we iron out perhaps a couple of kinks or gauge what level of interest and need there is in the public, I definitely can envisage it being made available.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions?
This is Mark Luther from US South Marine Science. Just a couple of comments. At a meeting I was at recently, met some groups from Southeast Asia who are restoring mangrove forests and selling carbon credits for them. Have you ever thought about doing that, maybe as an extra little source of revenue for funding further research or restoration projects? Certainly with that if you're interested.
Sorry, Mark. I had a bit of trouble picking that up. Can you repeat the question? I got that saying about mangroves from Southeast Asia.
Correct. This is Mark Luther from US South Marine Science. I got a microphone now, so maybe you can hear me. I was at a meeting recently, met some groups from Southeast Asia who are doing mangrove restoration and actually banking or selling carbon credits for doing so. I was wondering if that's something that's ever crossed your mind for perhaps at Ag Science, they were actually using the proceeds from that to fund additional restoration projects. So just wondered if you ever thought about that, and if you'd like me, I can hook you up with these folks.
Yeah, it's I think it's a good idea. At the moment, a lot of our funding that we provide to others, we won't fund for restoration where it's tied to mitigation, regulated mitigation. But it's definitely an evolving area, and I can certainly see the benefits of doing it. I've seen different takes on that on the question of funding for mangrove restoration, both through, as you said, sort of mitigation banking, and also insurance for insurance purposes. So yeah, at the moment it's not something that we've got involved in, but it's certainly, yeah, it's certainly an interesting idea.
Thank you, Mark.
May I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Go right ahead. Just if you could state your name so we have it for the record.
Right. This is Mary Keith from Tampa Audubon. And for 4 or 5 years, we've been providing monthly or quarterly bird survey data for the Schultz Preserve and also for the Rock Ponds tracks down along the Manatee County border, Hillsborough Manatee line. Are those data being incorporated into these? I mean, I realize you don't have that kind of data for all of your sites, but is that data incorporated into how you evaluate the success of your restoration in these areas? Because that's partly why we were doing it, why we were asked to do it in the first place.
Yeah, it is. When we go out to a site, we will compile information about that site to inform our on the ground assessment, and part of that will be the goals of the project and the designs and so forth, because that's obviously very important to understand success. But if we have other information such as other monitoring efforts, then yes, we certainly consider that as part of our evaluation of the projects. And we have questions in our survey form that do talk to the use of a site by different species.
Thank you. Good question, Mary. We have a question here in person.
Yeah, good morning. This is Steve Mars, U.S. Department of Science. Comment and a question. First of all, I'll follow up on the idea of making this publicly available. I think that'd be great. From what I hear, I can see relevance to some ongoing projects that we have right now, so we could get access to that. And following up with that a little more, are you guys making any efforts, or are you considering any steps to archiving all this data? I mean, obviously there's a lot of information there. A lot of effort has gone into collating all this. But preservation of data is increasingly an issue in science. And I'm wondering if you're taking any steps to ensure the long-term preservation, accessibility, and findability of all this data.
Yeah, and to be honest, that is part of the reasoning behind doing this, is to make the data, I guess, sustainable. We have various data management systems within the district, anything from putting paper plans and contracts into a box and putting in archives, through to file sharing and management systems, but there was a lot of them, and And this is a way to tap into all of them so that we know what's there. It's not forgotten about. So yes, it's part of our data archiving and management process, and also it helps us to be regularly in touch with that data so that we know if we've got the right information.
So that's all internal preservation. What about use of a third party site? And I would make a suggestion that you might consider the USF digital collections for environmental and natural history. But just to consider some third party site as well as internal.
Okay, yeah, I'm certainly we're always looking for feedback. So yeah, if you'd like to send us any information about the about that platform, yeah, happy to consider it.
We have another question here in person.
Yeah, hi, Mark. This is Marcus Beck at the Tampa Bay Estuary Program. Got another data management question, so bear with me. With a tool like this, I'm thinking about end-to-end utility of it and updating information over time. I mean, obviously, you've done a lot of work finding, I guess, the paper archives and digitizing it and then collecting new information through Survey 123 that you mentioned. And my question is, when you do go out and get new information, how seamless is the integration of the field collected data with the dashboard? Is there a lot of management issues or QA/QC that has to happen to the data before it gets in the dashboard, or is it, basically as soon as in Survey 123 it's uploaded to the dashboard immediately?
It's certainly available to be uploaded. It comes in the format we need. It doesn't go directly in there per se. It does go through a QA process before it's put into that production environment. But from that, the integration of that is there's not a lot of transcribing into different templates and formats needed. The dashboard, the geodatabase update protocols are sort of designed to pick up that data as it's recorded from Survey 123, which comes in as a geodatabase in of itself. So it's a fairly easy process to pull that in, and the links are already established between those data sets. But yes, it doesn't go directly from the field without QA. It does go through that process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We do have a question online from Mark Ceramic from NOAA. Mark, if you want to unmute yourself.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Roger that. Hey, Mark, great presentation. And my question was, it was answered in the chat by Tara, and I'll just phrase it here for the record. So I was curious if other water management districts had a similar kind of tracking tool, and it may not be clear. In my opinion, again, I work in the federal regulatory arena, and I realize this database tracking is not relevant to, certainly not to mitigation, but for me personally, I find the information that the water management district is tracking and the metrics they're using, particularly regarding the Unified Mitigation Assessment Method, or UMAM, because that's a lot of the criteria that we in the federal arena also use for evaluating project success, both with impacts as well as mitigation. And I think it would be interesting, at least for me in the watershed for the Southwest Florida Water Management District's area of purview, to use this tool almost as a proxy or a cross-reference for candidate mitigation sites that may or may not reach success criteria. So again, I laud your efforts. I think it's a great tool, and I would definitely like to utilize it. So thank you.
Yeah, certainly reach out if there's particular projects you're interested in, and yeah, we can walk you through that.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, thank you once again, Mark and Tara, for the presentation and what looks to be a great tool for the future of Tampa Bay and the estuaries in Southwest Florida. So thank you for being here. We're going to move on to the presentation given about the Cross Bay Ferry with Ed Transic.
Oh.
Hello, Ed.
Thank you for inviting us. Let me share my screen. So before I get going, I want to say that I'll be presenting on behalf of the project, but joining us are members from the Kimley Horn team, Dawn Dodge, Corinne Bean, and Sarah Johnson, that if we get into some fine grained issues around environmental issues or anything else, they are the lead design and engineering firm for the project. So I think they're all online, and I see a lot of old friends that, online that I haven't seen in a while. So hello to everybody. So I will wade into the project. Let me share my screen and make sure I know what I'm doing here. Can you see my screen?
Looks good.
Okay. So I know the topic was the Cross Bay Ferry, and that's really kind of a marketing term for what is the Tampa Bay Ferry project. This is a public-private partnership project that involves Hillsborough County as the lead agency. The private partners are HMS Ferries and Southswell Development Group. I am kind of the lead on behalf of the project developers for the effort. As I mentioned, Kimley Horn is the lead design and engineering firm. Moffitt Nichols is an important sub with them. Major supporters of this project include MacDill Air Force Base. I saw that Andy Likens is on the call, which is great. Mosaic, for reasons I'll explain, and Hillsborough Area Regional Transit Authority. So the plan for permanent service has two elements. This project started off as a commuter route going from South County to MacDill Air Force Base, providing commuter service for the approximately 8,000 MacDill employees who live in South County and work at MacDill. This route option was identified over the last 20 years by multiple studies and stakeholders. It is the lowest lying fruit and where we can make the biggest bang for our dollar in terms of taking cars off the road and carrying passengers. A couple of years ago, though, we started a pilot project called the Cross Bay Ferry, running intercity service between Tampa and St. Petersburg, that was supported by the mayor of St. Pete and Hillsborough County and all the mayors, and that service continues today. It's got St. Pete, Tampa, Hillsborough County, and Florida Department of Transportation are financial partners in that. And so the plan, I'll call this the ferry plan, is to have intercity service on evenings and weekends and commuter service during the day, and those routes are shown there. The boats will be designed specifically for Tampa Bay waters. They'll carry between 149 and 350 passengers. They'll be low draft, front loading, very accessible. The various disability communities in Tampa Bay strongly support this because it's the only way to get back and forth. There's no transit service or paratransit service that does that. These boats are designed to, again, run in our low water conditions and are able to offload and onboard people fairly quickly. The big issue on any ferry project is where are the terminals. That's where you can't have ferry service without a terminal, and the project took a while to get going because of various issues of locating a terminal in South County. Thanks to Mosaic's participation and assistance with this, we have a terminal that will be located in South County. It will be the home base for the Tampa Bay ferry system. That terminal is located on the south side of Mosaic's Big Bend facility. You would access it through Big Bend Road, up Wyandotte, and a new access road to the ferry terminal site. We have worked very closely with Mosaic because it's their land. They have a major industrial complex there, to make sure what we do fits hand in glove. We've come up with a design for their site that will have a parking for approximately 1,200 cars, as well as future area for bus service and van pools. The site is designed, the site design is meant to be flexible, but at this point, South County doesn't have transit service, and it's not likely to have transit service in the near future. So this will be the only transit service that can serve South County. The terminal concept, just to give you an idea about, is a small but modern building designed just for ferry service. This location will only be used for ferry service. No events, no parties, no restaurant or anything. There'll be a small, just like an airport, concession area to serve passengers coming and going, but it will be exclusively, again, this terminal and the parking lot exclusively for ferry passengers. When it's not used for that, it'll be locked. That's the design. The MacDill Air Force commuter is a really robust transit option. It's the best transit on the west coast of Florida. Ferries will run every 15 minutes during peak communities, hourly during the day. There'll be an on-base transit connecting system, which we are planning to build and operate. The ferry transit voucher, which covers federal employees, will cover most of the cost. So once people come into MacDill, they will offload on a terminal, walk over to unarticulated buses, and circulate around the base, following routes that are currently used by HART. We have surveyed MacDill employees multiple times, and the last survey was done in coordination with MacDill last December. 1,100 employees responded in 4 days, which is pretty remarkable. 75% were federal, military, or civilian employees. And what they said is 94% commute by car today, which is no wonder. The only transit there are van pools, which are heavily used, but still limited. And the express bus service that goes into South County. 85% said they have commutes greater than 40 minutes, 50% more than 50 minutes. When we described the service in great particularity, 90% said they would definitely use the ferry. We asked them why. Saving time, saving money, and dependability, all ranked as like top 3 reasons. If you are in South County and are trying to get to Tampa or South Tampa, you know that it's a crapshoot as to when you get there, because anything can happen out on I-75 or 4, or I-75 or 41, or with the rail lines there. So this is a very strong service for these employees. It saves them time and money, and the benefits are pretty astonishing. We have upped the capacity ability of this service. We can carry 6,000 people a day. And given that very few people van pool, that's close to 6,000 cars off the road. This is the only transportation option in South County, in fact, Hillsborough County, that's a new option that actually materially reduces congestion. It has a significant time and cost savings for MacDill employees. It adds new transportation capacity in an area that's choked by new growth. And it comes at an incremental cost of around $1.8 million per mile for, amortizing the capital cost by the average trip it serves. And that contrasts with roadway expansions of at least $30 million per mile. So this is a pretty strong financial option. I want to talk a bit about the regional intercity service. As I mentioned, we are running one vessel that's chartered out of Boston. It only can run during the winter months because it runs between Boston and Provincetown during the summer. We're in the sixth season. Under the intercity plan, we will add a South County terminal to the service. The permanent service will operate all weeknights and weekends. There's about 25 to 30-minute travel time between South County and St. Pete or Tampa. For people that live in South County, this is the best way to get to those cities during rush hour. So if they want to go to the game, go to dinner, go to a museum or whatever, this is a premium option. I just want to say, as a longtime transit advocate, our transit options in the Tampa Bay area are really non-competitive because they typically take more time and are less reliable than driving. Why this is such a strong performer and why we've had record ridership on this is because it's competitive to the car. So it helps us shift that car road paradigm to transit paradigm. We have been surveying the existing Cross Bay Ferry customers for 6 years now. This is not a tourist ride. 97% of the people are getting off in the other city. Maybe 3% are riding there and riding back, and we track all this. 80% of the people using it live in Tampa Bay. They go to the other cities to dine. They go to events, cultural activities, shopping. While the Lightning is a very popular destination from St. Pete, only about 11% of the customers using the ferry actually are using it to go to Lightning events. Ferry customers are very good for business. 70% have reported spending more than $40 per person. This is also a economic generator. And as you all live in our region, you know this. People don't like the bridges, and they don't like to take the bridges at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, in the evening. 60% said they only travel to the other destination because they could use the ferry. On the other hand, 40% took the ferry instead of making a planned trip. Under the ferry plan, our capacity to move people will increase tenfold. So from a standpoint of urban businesses, some of these are in disadvantaged communities, it's a big deal. It is business, and people all get excited about Super Bowls. This has far more economic impact than any Super Bowl, and it's like every quarter of activity is of that magnitude. So it's pretty important. So as I mentioned, the ferry plan, we currently can carry 130,000 passengers a year. At a minimum, under the ferry plan, we'll be able to move 1.3 million. It's really significant for urban and inner city businesses. It does divert people off of peak hour recreational trips. I want to hasten to add something here. There's people are focused on saying if we're not taking off home to work trips off the grid, we're not doing anything. Only 20% of the people in Howard Franklin are home work trips. 80% are something else. Recreational tourism trips are bigger than home work trips. So taking recreational trips off the grid helps with traffic congestion. The intercity plan also provides new accessibility for South County residents, particularly to St. Pete. South County is at the moment pretty much a food desert. In 10 years, the population of South County is going to be bigger than the population of St. Petersburg. It also might create new opportunities for ecotourism in South County. The roadway into the ferry terminals designed with a hiking, biking trail, and if the county connects this to the, I think it's the South Suncoast Trail. I'm not sure the name of that. Sally Thompson's on, she might know it. But it provides new kind of biking and trails connectivity. Let's talk about the environmental benefits and impacts. I know that's of interest to everyone on the call. This diversion of commute traffic is a material reduction of non-point NOx and greenhouse gas emissions. The Tampa Estuary project has said a priority is reduction of transportation emissions from NOx. And this does that. Furthermore, the ferry vessels, because they're using Tier 4 diesel engines, have no NOx emissions. So whatever we take off the roadways is a net reduction of atmospheric non-point source transportation NOx emissions. There's also this opportunity to shift the sprawl congestion paradigm by having a premium transit option into South County. I know that we in the Tampa Bay area have not cracked this nut because we really don't have a premium transit option, but this is one of those. From an environmental perspective, the complex in South County is built on dredge spoils that were dredged up in the 60s. We're using an existing boat basin and an existing channel that was dredged to 14 foot in World War II. In Tampa and St. Petersburg, we're using existing harbors. Will be in the Vinoy Basin in St. Pete and at the Tampa Convention Center in Tampa. We have no known wetland or seagrass impacts. The main routes are making use of major shipping channels. And we're obviously aware of the fact that there's a lot of manatees down where we are, but we are, we're pulling in and coming in and coming out of the Big Bend area to dock. So we're, clutch idle speed and going slow. So we are mindful of the issues with respect to manatees, marine mammals, and design the project to avoid impacts to manatees. Again, the fact that the ferry routes are going to follow deep water commercial channels is significant. Where we stand on the project is last February, thanks to Congresswoman Castor, who's an incredible advocate of this project. The Federal Transit Administration awarded Hardin County a $4.9 million grant for a 350 passenger ferry vessel. The United States Air Force has assumed lead responsibility as a lead federal agency on the environmental rule under NEPA. Last July, the MacDill Air Force Base Facility Review Board approved the various options being considered for the ferry terminal, transit storage and transit route options. Andy Likens has been incredible to work with at MacDill. We are working closely with Mosaic to identify the specific terms for the long-term lease of the Mosaic property. We have designed the South County terminal in a manner that works for them. And we really appreciate that incredible working relationship. If all the stars align, right? We'll have the 350 passenger vessel in service for Tampa St. Pete intercity service in the spring of 2024, excuse me. And that'll just make use of existing facilities. Hopefully we'll be able to complete construction of the South County terminal in the spring of 2025, in which case we'd start the intercity service component, and then hopefully complete the construction of the MacDill Air Force Terminal by the end of summer 2025, and that commuter service will start. Again, a lot of assumptions here, but I think as Don Dodge can relate, this project has gone swimmingly well. We're ahead of schedule. We're on budget. We do have a new county commission, so we'll see how things go over there. And I want to thank you for your attentiveness and take any questions. And again, Dawn, Corinne, and Sarah Johnson are available to get into the weeds on any technical or detailed environmental issues. I'm going to stop the sharing so I can see people.
Very good. Thank you, Ed. And we're going to ask if there's any questions. If you're online, And when you have a question, just raise your hand. We'll see it hopefully. I see Sally has her hand raised.
This is just a quick question, Ed. You mentioned about trails or greenways. Will there be bicycle racks or whatever for people on all the ferries so they can get from one place to another?
Big time, Sally. Around 8% of our current riders on the Cross Bay Ferry take bikes on it.
Okay.
So these are designed to roll on and roll off. It'll be far more commodious than the current ferry where you have to take it in the back. You just roll on the front, there's racks there, and roll off. So very, very bicycle friendly. Wheelchair friendly too.
Good.
Thank you, Sally. I had a question, as far as the McDill dock, will that be just for McDill employees?
No, anyone that, just like the express buses, anyone can get on an express bus and go to McDill. The McDill determines who can get on the base. So as long as you got a credential to go on the base, you can go there. If it turns out, like on the buses, they say, sorry, you don't have credentials, you get off and catch the bus on the return trip. Same way with the ferries. So there's no principal difference from that.
Right, so not necessarily for McDill, just in McDill, but you need to be going to McDill in order to get off at that.
Yeah, it's a destination. But there's a lot of there's very strong interest in this in former McDill, foreign military employees in South County to go to take advantage of the base exchange and the base clinic. And we're going to run during the day hourly service, and that's of great interest to that very considerable population in South County.
You know, I certainly get that, and I think that population would make this successful right out of the gate. I have a question about, and I'm not that familiar with the South County spot, the Mosaic spot, but is there any opportunity in that direct area for residential or growth of residential or otherwise? Is it all?
Not directly. We're in the middle of a pretty intense industrial complex, which we frankly like because it provides a lot of security and that we're dealing with military population. That's a good thing. However, it's really easy to get to that site from Big Bend Road, where there's a lot of growth and development on. And one of the benefits of this is if anyone's been in South County between 3 and 5 o'clock in the afternoon, or 6 to 8 in the morning, you just never know when you're going to get through it all. So this really, and there's a huge McDill population clustered around Big Bend Road. So these trips are all in the morning are all going northbound, or they're trying to get on the interstate, or they're trying to get on US 41. And the McDill complex location means those folks aren't going to try to make this turning movement either in the morning or the evening, but are going to go straight. And going straight is a lot better than trying to turn. So we take a lot of people off the strategic highway system, and also reroute local traffic so it's away from bottlenecks and congestion points. So not only do we have a lot of lift capacity, but the redirection definitely helps with mobility on the transportation grid.
Thank you. We do have a hand raised. Brendan Myers, go ahead.
Hey, thank you. So this is Brendan Myers with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Great presentation. Thank you. A lot of good information. I do have a couple questions related to manatees. I just want to make a comment that first I want to make a comment that you said this area of the South Terminal was important to manatees. It is not just important to manatees. It is a warm water aggregation area. It is the most important
we understand
area for manatees. Yeah. Okay. You also, in one of your slides, you said, and I quote, "With respect to manatees, project being designed to avoid impacts to manatees." Can you please expand on that? What are those design points to avoid impacts to them?
Well, I'm going to defer to our environmental team because we're starting that process of consultation. And I don't think, I'm not in a position to prejudge that. I don't know that we're in a position to prejudge that. HMS is the largest ferry operator in North America. And they will operate in Puerto Rico and Pensacola, Jacksonville. So this is not their first roadshow, if you will, dealing with marine mammals. Obviously, because it's an aggregation area, those issues are more acute and more important. But I'm going to ask Corinne, who from Kimley Horn do you want to have address that question?
Sarah, do you mind taking this one?
Yeah.
Hey, Brandon, it's Sarah Johnson with Kimley Horn. You know, like Ed said, we are kind of just at the beginning of the design permitting phase. And so we're still in the last third of the NEPA process. And so we are coming up with coordination with Fish and Wildlife, just starting that a lot through the McDill side. And we're currently coming up with mitigation and implementation strategies, both for the construction of the sites and for the daily route comings and goings. So as a basic step, you know, we would obviously comply with those in-water standard manatee construction precautions, as well as the construction outside of the winter months, as because it's a warm water aggregation area. And then we're adding in other implementation strategies to avoid and minimize impacts to the manatee as we coordinate with Fish and Wildlife and other agencies in NOAA as well. So.
I can't hear you. I think you're muted.
I did have one other question, but I see that Mark Rochelle had his hand up, so I don't want to take time away from somebody else's question.
Hey, Mark. You're on mute.
How you doing, Ed? Good to see you. Yeah.
Nice to see you again.
So
Happy holidays.
Yeah, you too. And I'm happy to see that the ferry project is backing up and running again, and then you have that partnership with Mosaic, and looks like things are gonna be able to move forward.
I think I know some people who advocated this site.
yeah, it's a real good site. So of course we're always doing work in the area, and my question and concern is that we were recently awarded a grant to work on the Fishhook Spoil Island. So it's just the island just west of the terminal there. There's lots of erosion. It's a dredge spoil island owned by the Port Authority, Port Tampa Bay. And we're going to go look at some options for erosion control through either reef balls or marsh plantings. And so when I was thinking about that project, I was not thinking about the ferry boat coming in and out, however many times a day. So, I just wanted to raise that concern. I know you mentioned that the boats should be at idle speed once they're docking, but that is not necessarily a slow speed zone. And I know in the boating business, and I guess every business, time is money. So I'm sure your operators want to get up on plane as soon as possible. Sure they do. So I'm just raising that concern about the potential impacts to the island, and again, it's nesting oyster catchers and birds like that.
Yeah, that's fair enough, and I'm glad that our team's on to hear that. The design of the boats are cats, right? So and they're shallow draft cats. So the wake issue is dramatically reduced compared to a lot of watercraft. I would guess that probably a larger 50-foot yacht probably has more of a wake. But anyway, it's a fair question to ask, but the designs are, Tampa Bay doesn't have a lot of water on it, so the boats have to be designed to be shallow draft, and that kind of follows with lower wakes and impacts from wakes. Thank you.
I appreciate it. I just want to bring it up, and I guess that during my design process for our project, I'll have our engineers talk with engineers about what kind of your anticipated wakes and energy and routes and things like that. So I just wanted to bring that up, but I appreciate it.
for sure.
Thank you. We have a question from Mark here in person.
Hi, this is Mark Luther from USF Marine Science. We've done a couple of studies with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Tampa Bay Estuary Program on ship weights in Tampa Bay. We'd be happy to work with you on actually quantifying what the ship weight effect on these period routes are likely to be. I want to bring up another point too, that this is actually the Port Redmond part of Tampa Bay.
Yeah, he was talking to it though.
There's just a bit of an echo, so it's hard to hear everything you're saying, at least for me. Sorry about that.
No worries. Again, we're happy to share some of our ship weight studies with you and perhaps work with you to quantify the ship weight effects from these vessels. Also, just wanted to point out that this is a commercial port facility, part of the Port of Tampa Bay. Chris Cooley wants to weigh in at all, but it's over a mile away from the Manatee congregation area that's on the south side of the power plant there at their warm water discharge canal.
Thank you. Brendan, did you have another question, a follow-up question?
Yeah, I did have one separate question. So just some back of the napkin math based on your PowerPoints, you'd be looking at adding over 6,000 ferry runs per year to the system of Tampa Bay. And I just
No.
want.
Let me see. I don't know. I don't know the math of that. Let me
Okay,
think
I
about it.
just went based on ferry runs will be every 15 minutes during peak commute periods over 5-day work week, and then ferries will run hourly during midday based on your presentation. I just want to just make sure that I'm reading this correctly, that this project is not just from the South Terminal to MacDill. This incorporates ferry runs from South Terminal to MacDill, South Terminal to St. Pete, and South Terminal to downtown Tampa. Is that correct?
Well, the operation's a little bit different than that. So on the intercity piece, there's far more ferry traffic between the two cities. And if I can kind of illustrate that, and don't hold me to this, just so you conceptually get it. When the MacDill commuter ends, that's when intercity can start, right?
Okay,
And-
so the project would incorporate runs through the whole bay.
Yes, but so let's say a ferry leaves South County at 6 o'clock and goes to St. Pete, right? That ferry then goes from St. Pete to Tampa, and it goes back and forth a couple times before it comes down to South County. So there's a larger number of trips between the two cities than between connecting to South County and Tampa and St. Petersburg. So the math's not necessarily straightforward, I guess my point, Brent.
Okay, all right. I would just make a note
Sure.
when you are going through any sort of consultation process, whether it seems here there's several federal nexus, either through the Corps, through FTA, or through MacDill itself. Just make sure that your proposed project is the entire project and not just from South County to the Corps, to MacDill. It seems like the entire bay needs to be, or at least all these transits need to be incorporated into that. So I would just make a note of that.
Well, Sarah's online and she's our point, so appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have a question online from Nick Fletcher.
Hey, Nick.
Hey, I just wanted to make a point because it sounded like I've heard someone mention that the aggregation area is the south side of Big Bend, which is true, but there is no seagrass in the Big Bend discharge canal. So all those manatees will need to be going in and out periodically to go eat. So it's just something to keep in mind that although they're, the main area of them will not be right next to where you plan on putting that terminal, but there will be significant manatee traffic during the season and anytime we have cold water right through that area.
Yeah, no, we appreciate that. We've seen the tracking. We've seen the tracking data. Are aware of that. The little manatee highway that's there. Unfortunately, the manatee highway is kind of where we're running slow. because we have to. We're coming into dock and even dock, so.
I have a question. This is Ann Paul. So, where are you going to do your maintenance of the ferry and the overnight storage and you know,
Sure. So-
where's it going to be?
So there's no heavy, the boats are all going to be kept at, I can put that back up and I'll just describe it. If you want to see it, I can show it to you. The boats are going to be kept at the South County terminal. There is, there'll be sanitary water and sewer there. We'll be taking that out. There'll be no fuel kept on site. Just like we do now, fuel trucks will come out to the boat and load. We'll build a manifold into the dock. Corinne or Dawn can talk about that. And anything other than cleaning and washing, not even washing, cleaning the boat inside and that kind of maintenance, that anything that was related to ordinary maintenance or major maintenance will be done off-site.
Thank you. I don't see any further questions. Thank you, Ed, once again for the presentation and good seeing you.
Yeah, and by the way, if anyone's got any questions about this, Dawn Dodge is on the line. Sarah, who would you like people to reach out to, Dawn?
Probably reach directly out to Sarah and copy myself. Either way, we'll get to the right person.
And Sarah, what's your email?
Sarah.johnson@kinleyhorn.com with a hyphen. We can put it in the chat here, I think.
Very good. I was going to suggest that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. We're going to move on to our next presentation.
Thank you.
The TBRPC was awarded grant funding from the Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration Fund to complete an economic evaluation of Tampa Bay estuary. This presentation will share the preliminary results from the study, which is expected to be finalized and released in February 2023. So I believe we have Randy DeShazo, Alana Todd, Jamie Neville, and Perry Wall from the Tampa Bay Regional Plan House.
So I'm gonna try to make this. You can hold this too. Like you can take it out. I just more comfortable. Hello, everyone. My name is Jamie Neville. I am the statewide economic analyst for Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, and I'm here with my colleague Harry Walsh. And today we are going to be going over the economic value of the Tampa Bay. So why is the Bay valuable? A lot of people in here are actually involved with some kind of industry involved with the Bay, so I probably don't have to tell you as much. But people far and wide come to our area for our beaches, to fish in our waters. We have goods coming in and out internationally through our ports, and we have multiple military bases and transportation going in and out of our waters as well. And so then it comes down to how are we going to value each of these benefits? And the way that we decided was we were going to go through, it's going to show up. We're going to go through first an economic footprint, which is going to include the output, jobs, and wages generated by Bay-dependent industries. Then we're going to look at the proximity effects of the Bay on property value premiums. And then lastly, we're going to be looking at the values of regulating ecosystem services provided by habitats such as mangrove forests, saltwater marshes, and freshwater wetlands. So this is actually an updated valuation progress from a previous report done in 2014. The goal of this, of course, was to update it. This is from 2014, it's 2022. Quite a bit of time has passed since then. And then we also wanted to make a report that was going to be easier to replicate so that we can do it more often using the same methodologies,
so that we can get the same numbers or same type of numbers across different time periods. The area we used is the Tampa Bay watershed that is within about 6 different counties. You'll see in this map of the watershed that it doesn't include all of the counties. And so to account for that, we did zip codes. And so we only accounted for businesses within zip codes within this watershed. Okay, so first we're going to talk about the economic impacts. And really what that is an industry footprint of the watershed. And so how we did this was we used an input-output model called InPlan that analyzes industry's cash flows. And that gives us the ability to measure employment, output, GDP, personal income, things like that. In this presentation, I'm only going to be describing output, which is the value of all goods and services within an industry. Again, we only picked out businesses that had zip codes within that watershed. And we used that to kind of account for the fact that not all of the industries, not all the businesses within this area can be attributed directly towards the bay. We can't say that they came here only for the bay. So the industries that we looked at are living resources, marine construction, marine transportation, ship and boat building, tourism, research, and defense. We picked these industries based on the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's report on the U.S. marine economy. That was completed in 2021. So the first industry, of course, that we look at is living resources. So estuaries are biodiverse ecosystems home to many fish, birds, plants, and microorganisms that provide goods and resources to businesses and households within this area. And so that includes things like fishing, farm raising animals, seafood production, medicinal and botanical production, creating tools such as rope in order to catch or use these resources in our bay. And that came out to around $580 million in total output produced by the Tampa Bay estuary per year. The next industry that we're going to look at is marine construction. And we say that marine construction is dependent on the bay because it improves safety of the waterways for trade and transportation. It cleans wreckage and debris. It rehabilitates coastal structures and habitats to protect against sea level rise, hurricanes, and other environmental disruptions, so like seawalls. Marine construction activities actually include dredge navigation, building docks and marinas, replacing coastal habitat loss, creating seawalls and retaining walls, and also creating greenways and parks. And so this totaled at about $4.6 billion in total output produced by Tampa Bay each year from that marine construction industry. So for transportation, marine transportation, this includes any kind of cruise ships coming in and out of the area, massive cargo ships, as well as ferries and your dolphin tours, any late night dinner water tours, any kind of scenic tours like that. And so this comes out to about $2.4 billion in total output produced by Tampa Bay each year. I also want to stay on this. This one is so very big, mainly because we have 3 major ports within our area. And so this includes the Port of Tampa Bay, the Port of St. Petersburg, and the port in northern Manatee County. The next industry we're looking at is the ship and boat building industry. Again, this is a pretty high number, and mainly we have such a big number because, again, of those ports within that area. That really gives us an advantage on the industry and the amount of ships in the area that need any kind of repair, any kind of building, and things like that. And so we are able to pull $922 million out of output from the ship and boat building industry. The next, of course, is tourism and recreation. So unfortunately, a lot of our tourist activities in the Tampa Bay cannot be valued. So like fishing, going to the beach. What we can value, however, is hotels, eating at restaurants. We can value recreational fishing license, which is actually in the research section. I'll talk about that later. And things like that. So museums, any kind of cultural exhibit that people are going to come to and experience once they get to the Bay. And that comes out to 2.4 billion in total output produced each year. Oops, too far. Next, I'm going to talk about research. Like I said previously, we do have a lot of local, regional, state, and federal organizations that focus on research and coastal innovation for the protection and the resiliency of our bays. There are a lot of benefits in our bays, and a lot of people realize that. And so they put a lot towards the research to help maintain the bay. So license fees from fishing license go directly towards conservation and restoration through Fish and Wildlife Services. And so we were able to capture that here in the research section, which produces $1 billion in output each year. The last industry that we're going to look at today is defense and aviation. Of course, this is through the United States Coast Guard Air Station in Clearwater and the MacDill Air Force Base. This includes marine defense and aviation activities like deterring Indian attacks, aiding in disaster relief, and military training. And that produces 2.1 billion in total output. So what's the total that we came to? Adding up all of these industries and their output, it came around to $14.8 billion and supports 93,000 jobs. And before we move on, I want to say that all of this data was collected through IMPLAN, which gets their data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the Bureau of Economic Analysis. And so all of this is public data and available to y'all. And so I'm going to move on and give it over to Harry to do property values.
Perfect. Thank you, Jamie. Again, I'm Harry Walsh. I'm Economic Development Planner at the TVRPC and on the project team here. So I'll be talking about some of the work that I did in looking at some of the intangible or less visible aspects of the Bay, as well as talking about some of the work that Alana Todd did, which she is excited to present, just couldn't be here today. So as Jamie was talking about, we have all of these things which are dealing with cash flows from industries. They appear on a profit and loss sheet. There are things that can be easily quantified in terms of market values. There's also intangible value that the Bay provides just simply by being there, by being a beautiful place, by being healthy, by being a thing people want to come to and live nearby. And so we wanted to take a look at property values and try and figure out a way to see how much is the Bay contributing to the value of properties. So we started off by taking a bunch of property appraiser data for within the watershed, only single family homes, which was about 680,000 single family homes. From that, the property appraiser provides a whole bunch of data on them. We had a whole bunch of data points to play with, and size, livable space, how recently they were constructed, all of that. Through an iterative process, we were able to determine which of these variables was important and then include them as parameters in a linear regression. So we're able to control for them and figure out what the contribution of, say, another square foot of property is adding to the average value. Then we had looked before about distance from the Bay. You know, if you're 10 feet further or 10 feet closer, does that contribute? That we couldn't find a good statistical significance for, and the literature review indicated that we probably shouldn't go that route. Looking at a few studies that looked at water quality, what they did is they basically drew a line. So they made a boundary saying, is this property 3 kilometers or closer to the Bay or further than 3 kilometers from the Bay? And they found a lot of statistical significance doing work like that. So that's exactly what we did. So controlling for all of these other things that contribute to a property's value, size, age, all of that. There's an added sale price. This one is sale price, and in the full report, we also have justified value and a few different regressions here. But added sale price, just for simply being a similar property, but you're 3 kilometers or closer to the bay, you add about $43,000 to the sale price of the home. And just a little side note on this too, justified value also goes up, which is the assessed value essentially. That goes up by about, I believe, 35,000. So sale price is a little bit higher, but we're also in a very hot market. So that kind of explains a little bit of the discrepancy. So if you take that per single family value of about 43,000 and then multiply that by all the single family properties that are within 3 kilometers, it's about $29.5 billion. So that is essentially what we're calling the total amenity value added to single family properties just for being near Tampa Bay. So that's kind of one way we're trying to quantify some of the other sort of non-market aspects of the bay being there. And then like that, there's non-visible things that are certainly tangible, but that we don't include, like carbon sequestration, mitigation from stormwater, all of these environmental impacts that I'm sure many of us here on this call are interested in and care about deeply in our work. And so we wanted to look at some of the indirect values in some ways to put a dollar amount on these non-visible values so that they can be taken more seriously and be considered alongside some of the market aspects. So estuaries and coastal ecosystems, they play an important role in sequestering carbon. So they store a lot of carbon that otherwise would be in the environment and would be causing damage, increasing climate change impacts. And so this is incredibly important, and we have information on by the type of land, by the type of environment, how much carbon sequestration it provides. You know, are you a wetland? Are you coastal? Are you upland? We had all of that information in rates and acreage. So we're able to find at this rate, this number of acres of this type of thing, it's sequestering this amount of carbon. And then we were able to take a range of valuations on the price of carbon, and that's where we're getting this range. So the low end, which is a cap and trade estimate for how much carbon it is worth, gives us about 6.9 million each year in carbon sequestration that's provided by estuary environments. On the higher end, 62.7 million is the estimate from the social cost of carbon. And again, that is each year. There's an estimated 500 million to, I believe it is, $6 billion stored already. So that's just what they're doing each year. If those environments were to be destroyed or disrupted, there'd be a much higher cost. So don't think about this just as, say, a replacement cost, but what they're currently doing just from existing each year. Then likewise, they're providing flood reduction and mitigation. They what's called attenuate the water as floods come in, so they lower the height of waves coming in. And in that way, they're protecting properties. So there's a range of estimations for how much different types of land protect the properties. And so again, we also wanted to present a range. So we looked for the percentage of a 100-year storm. We did a net present value. We looked over a 30-year period for properties. Why 30 years? That is the average length of a mortgage. So we figured that would be of interest. And on the lower end of a low wetland estimate, this is about a 10% mitigation. That's what wetlands provide in the time of a flood or a storm event. On the high end, mangroves are estimated to provide about a 25% mitigation or attenuation rate. So on the lower end, we have about $900 million in net present value to $1.3 billion in net present value of mangroves. And specifically, this was based on Restore America's Estuaries, the study that they did focusing on Pinellas, Manatee, and Hillsborough. So this is not including all of the counties, excuse me, that are included in the watershed. There's parts of Polk and Pasco and Sarasota that are excluded from this, but we figured this is the majority of the watershed and it is relevant to include. And then also there's nutrient cycling and specifically denitrification. So nitrogen is an essential nutrient, but too much of it in the water leads to harmful algae blooms. It leads to red tide. It's important that we have plants and microorganisms that are taking some of that nitrogen out. And so this was one of the most interesting to value, because right now there are some estimates, but nitrogen is not quite as valued as carbon. Carbon has been known, there's cap and trade, there's established values. But for nitrogen, there are some nutrient trading programs that exist, most notably in North Carolina. And so we were able to use their valuations of, I think it was, they say a kilogram of nitrogen is about $88. And so likewise before, we were able to look at the environment type. Is it mangrove? Is it wetland, upland? How much denitrification does that do? Multiply that by the acreage, multiply that by the price of carbon. And each year there's $646 million worth of denitrification services. So you could think of that as a replacement cost. You would have to put in environments that would be, you have, planting mangroves, putting in plants that provide denitrification services. But that's what an already mature environment is doing. So even if you're planting a new one, even if you do that large investment, it would still be better to just have the existing environment in the first place. So it is incredibly important. It is incredibly important that we keep what we have and then try to expand it and conserve it as much as possible. So with all of that, all the value that the estuary system is providing, there's been land use changes that are making this harder to keep this natural environment that's providing all these services. The trend is continuing. We are much more conscious now than we were decades ago of the importance of maintaining the estuary system, but it is still a negative trend. So our water quality is still declining, and this is going to have impacts going forward. Obviously, we've been having extreme red tide events, and so this is going to ripple out through all areas of our economy. So everything that Jamie was talking about, the effect on property values, everything. The amount of people who are willing to come here. We know that if we have red tide events, people are less likely to come and enjoy our beaches. They might go to, say, other parts of Florida or other parts of the country. So protection, restoration are needed. So in summary, the estuary is critical to our region. There's a number of industries supported by the estuary. There's benefits from other supporting and regulating services for environmental factors. We need to protect and restore as much as we can. And just a note, so this valuation report, we're going to be having a stakeholder meeting next week. We're going to be talking with TBERF and hearing some of their, TBEP and some of their suggestions for how we're going to further refine this report before it's going to conclude in February of 2023. Where it will be public and we'll be able to share it with everyone here. So with that, thank you so much. Please feel free to email either of us for questions, but if we have time, I'll take any questions you have right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark. I'm a little confused by your evaluation of maritime transportation in the bay. Port Tampa Bay's website claims a $17 billion per year economic impact.
Yes, so I completely understand what you're saying. We based all of this information on Implan, who bases that on publicly available data. So according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the Bureau of Economic Analysis, this is the number that we came up with. And we chose this mainly because we wanted it to be able to be reproduced over and over again. Whereas we can't see the port's numbers, we can't verify that that's true, but we can verify that as well.
Hi, Randy DeShazo. I just wanted to add a couple of points about the port's numbers. These estimates always differ. In some cases, the port is probably also including indirect impacts. When they prepare those kinds of indirect impacts, they tend to use their own sets of multipliers that we don't necessarily agree with, or that we can easily source from the same places. So there are always going to be differences in those estimates. We're also trying to take a much more finer perspective on how they contribute to the bay rather than total operations. So. Sorry, to give you a little bit more of an example, there are lots of freight operations. So the port is counting all of the freight movement related activity in the Tampa Bay area, almost certainly not including firms that are interacting directly with the port.
Thank you. And Sally Thompson has a question online.
Sure.
I had to unmute myself. This is not a question. This is a comment. I always, when I hear about this, I have to acknowledge Rich Paul, who was on the original committee for the Tampa Bay Study Commission when we did the original report. And it was Rich who said we need to look at economic benefits, and we made that number one. Some of us from the more environmental area were like, huh? But this is great. Thank you very much. And thank you, Rich.
Thank you. Thank you, Rich.
Thank you. Sure.
Hi, Steve Myers, USF. Good comment and then a question. First of all, as everybody here knows, this is great. And because I worry that there's a sense of complacency about the health of the bay that's kind of creeping in because of the amount of work that's been done over decades to clean it up. And people think that, oh, this is just the way it is, instead of just being the result of a lot of work, a lot of careful planning and policies that you put into place. So this is great. Question is, so towards the end of your talk, you mentioned some existing problems, right? I mean, we still have harmful algal blooms, there's shoreline erosion, sewer overflows, things like that. Is there any, have you guys done, or has anybody done any studies on the negative impact, economic impact of those events? Because, you know, fixing them is not going to be cheap or quick. So it would require some motivation, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So two things that, no, we're not looking at it in this study specifically about saying, here's the cost of all of that. But yes, certainly those studies exist and they were part of the literature review for this. And no, it's absolutely incredibly important that we have I don't know, some sort of idea of what the cost is. The cost of doing nothing has been kind of the term for this. So there is going to be some cost to us if we don't invest currently, and it's important to do something.
I do want to mention.
Yeah, I haven't seen much of that, so.
If you could,
There are some studies available. For instance, there's a red tide study that looked at the economic impacts of the red tide, and they saw a lot of people, instead of staying within the Tampa Bay, moving on towards actually Orlando and going to Disney World. I'll let Randy talk about it. He's the one that completed it.
Right. So we looked at some of the economic impacts of HAB, and so what happens is, in terms of overall economic impact, people tend to shift their spending patterns. So in a lot of cases, small businesses are directly affected, but the overall economic impact is that people will shift their spending to different parts of the state. So that's what they what the economic impact has been so far.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, with respect to Tampa Bay SR program, obviously great work you guys are doing, definitely needs to be done.
Thank you.
The original evaluation study was 2014, right?
Yes.
So about 10 years later, good, but it's being done. I had a question related to reproducibility of the analyses and the methods.
Absolutely.
You talked about that a little bit, and I'm just curious if you expand on exactly what you mean by that. How is this reproducible in the sense of, you know, when you get more data, new data, updated information, is it a matter of, you know, let's just run the numbers again, get new results, or is it like a several month process to do this by hand type thing? And follow up on that, if it is really truly reproducible, how often do you expect the numbers to be updated? Like, for example, the land use cover players by SWIFT, they come out every 2 to 3 years. Is that kind of the timeline you're expecting to update it, or is it just?
Well, however often you want. But yeah, to your first part before I get to the second one. So for reproducibility, every single data source that we're using is publicly available. You could sit at your computer and get it, or at least you could request the corresponding, state agency and get it, like the property appraiser. So we were looking at other studies, not just the 2014 study, but other studies, and they would take something like, you could find an article saying, people come from the Northeast and spend, $100 billion in the Tampa Bay region. And if we couldn't find the source on that number, we did not include it. So it was not there. So everything that we have, that's why we're relying on things like InPlan, the property appraisers, we're relying on other studies, and we can at least say, like, I believe Alana selected the North Carolina valuation for nitrogen, which was $88 million, $88 per kilogram. If someone else comes and goes, well, that's not true, in Tampa Bay, it's actually 70, that can easily be plugged out, changed out and edited. So everything is clear. There's no black box in any of this. In terms of how much time it takes to reproduce, I mean, I don't think it could be done in just one single day, but the point is it should be much faster than how long it took us to do this the first time. If we were to replicate it in the exact way we did it, it would be significantly faster, I would say. And again, how frequently, I don't know. It was very nice we were able to get this this grant to do this, and I don't want to promise anything, but if we were to get it in the future, I imagine we would be willing to do this again. So.
Okay, great, thank you. We want to talk more next week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions. Great presentation, great information, good work. There was one comment, Mark Fremick from the National Marine Fisheries Service, of course, pointed out that it was a sea scallop and not a bay scallop in the photograph. So,
we apologize deeply.
I was actually hoping nobody would notice. I did not know what type of fish that were. Yeah, I apologize. Those were publicly available pictures.
Good, thank you.
I don't know fish types.
So next we're going to have a roundtable discussion on current issues and initiatives. Chair Todd asked me to mention, and has been mentioned a few times already. As you all know, there's some higher levels of red tide being found in Sarasota Bay, and some smaller levels in this entrance of Tampa Bay. So she wanted to ask about funding opportunities that members are aware of any for the preparation and coordination of red tide response and other efforts to monitor, research, and mitigate red tide. So it's a question that she put out there to see if and ask for any input from anybody on the agency. All right, we need to get some funding opportunities for a lot of these efforts, obviously. And if anybody else has any subject matter that they'd like to bring up during the roundtable, any current concerns, initiatives, please.
So, Ann Paul again, I just would like to bring up, some of the bird concerns, going forward, bird issues. The fishing line impacts on our seabirds, especially pelicans, is something that the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission is working on hard through the Hoot bird working group, and especially with this kind of pier. But this is something that's affecting our pelican and other water bird populations throughout the bay. Something that Tampa Bay Watch and the Estuary Program and the Audubon chapters, as well as Audubon's Coastal Island Sanctuaries, have been working on for years, but it's a continuing problem. Also, the problem that we talked about at the last meeting, I think, related to rodenticide, the anticoagulant rodenticide. It is something that really I think affects not only the hawks and owls that eat rodents that are affected by this, and then the bioaccumulation in their bodies, but this runoff from these traps could also be affecting water quality, and therefore people are fishing because of the high accumulation of those chemicals. So I think that that's a big question. Also, birds are affected by bird strike, hitting lighted buildings during migration. So it's possible that our community could work on dark skies during the periods of migration when so many birds are coming down the Atlantic flyway area. This is something we could work on as a community. And those are just some of the things that I know are concerned to us bird-wise. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Jessica here from the Timber Bay Estuary Program. Two things for you. The comprehensive conservation management plan update is in the works, so if we haven't reached out to you for something, we might in the near future. Be doing a lot of community outreach on that too, and of course working with the municipalities and agencies throughout the watershed. So stay tuned. Also, the Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration Fund request for proposals opens in January. This that we just heard about was one of the TBER funded projects, and we do focus more on restoration work. We're doing less of the study type of stuff. That is part of it. But if you know of any areas that are ripe for restoration, then you can work with the municipality or the landowner, or whoever that is, to seek a grant for restoration work. Let us know. Me and Maya Burke are both open to helping you guys put together a proposal. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Anything else for the roundtable? So the next question, and this is a common question at the end of every meeting, we're always looking for base sounding article ideas. I think a couple of the impacts to birds might be a great article once again for base soundings. And we could look at everybody, this group certainly, but a lot of people in Tampa Bay understand the impacts of fishing on birds, but the other things that you mentioned may not be quite as center as they might be. And obviously last year we heard a lot about rodenticide and the impacts of that because of one family of birds, but it's something that's, I don't think it's gone away, and it won't without some effort by different folks. I mean, rodenticide not only impacts birds, but it also impacts domestic animals. Our neighborhood cats and stuff can get into that stuff. So that may be another day soundings article. Any other suggestions, please?
I just would like to let everybody know that this coming Monday at the TBRPC Council meeting, we're going to be honoring base soundings for 20 years of phenomenal articles. And this lady over here, Ms. Vicki Parsons, has been with the project since it started 20 years ago. And we'll have a hot breakfast at 9 o'clock on Monday. So that will entice you to come in and celebrate with us on the 20th anniversary. And we are waiting on some very beautiful coffee table books to arrive, and each of you will get a copy with several of the best articles over the past 20 years. So we hope to have that ready for you, and if you want to jumpstart, come have breakfast with us and celebrate.
Thank you, Ren. That was stated way better than I was going to say on this post-it note. Thank you. That's okay. Next meeting is March 9th, 2023. We are looking for, and there's a couple of things that were suggested today. We are looking for meeting topics for the 4 meetings that we have upcoming in 2023. So if something is going on in your agency or new projects being proposed or areas of interest, please reach out to our staff here and we can get it on an agenda. The last thing that I wanted to mention, before I ask if there's anything for the good of the agency, all full agency meetings will be hybrid until further notice, just so you know. We cover a pretty large geographic area, so certainly it helps with attendance to be able to be hybrid, although it's a little bit clunky being up here and looking at hands, people and stuff. Does anybody else have anything else to offer before we adjourn?
The Legislative Review Committee is set to meet again on, the date is not set, I know on our computer to speak on it, but note that the legislative session begins on March 7th and the ABM meeting is March 9th. So we would love to be able to have a legislative watch list available for the ABM to review and approve. I don't know how that's going to happen since bills can be filed up until 2 days before. So just keep that on your radar as something that may come up at the next meeting. And I know Mayor Brown already mentioned we are still seeking an RC chair. So just for
Thank you, and that's a great suggestion as far as the watch list. You can get something good with that. If there's nothing further, I don't see any hands online. Thank you all for being here. Meeting's adjourned. Nice.